Today, we straddle the U.S.-Canada border, exploring a joint history of discovery and friendship, while stopping to enjoy some iconic lighthouses, stunning landscapes, and a fun stop for blueberries. Come along and join us on these holiday roads. Today we're in Calais, Maine, just across the border from St. Stephen's, New Brunswick, Canada, and it is a foggy morning here at St Croix Island, International Historic Site, so we're going to go check this out. St Croix Island recounts the French expedition led by Pierre Duguay to establish a settlement in North America. Duguay was most interested in establishing the fur trade while he was accompanied by Samuel Champlain, whose primary purpose was to map a possible northwest passage for trade with Asia. The French had assumed that the similar latitude of France with the northern Atlantic coast would yield similar climate conditions and weather patterns, but the island settlers were wildly unprepared for the winter conditions that were significantly harsher than their homeland, and simultaneously cut the island off from inland trade and supply replenishment. Here's a display of the settlement with the extensive archaeological research that's been done so they can map what the settlement looked like here at St. Croix Island. And a model of the colony as depicted by Samuel Champlain. Now it's really foggy today, so can't really see the island out in the distance. But here at St. Croix, 1603 to 1604, the settlement over here, but after a really harsh winter, the French colonists and the expedition leaders learned valuable lessons about the weather and the climate and farming and the restrictions of North Atlantic American situation. So they tore down the settlement and then eventually built a new one further inland so that they wouldn't be trapped so much, and that colony, Port Royal, survived. A short, quick little stop, a short visitor center, but really important history here for some of the very first earliest settlements in North America. This by the French, 1603, prior to the English settlement of Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607, prior to the Pilgrims arriving in Massachusetts at Plymouth Rock in 1620. Really cool, an often forgotten place. After exploring an international heritage site in Maine, we ventured a little further south to explore another, this time a presidential retreat located back in Canada. The Roosevelt cottage at Campobello Island. Most of the island is permanent residence, but this was the family vacation home of the Roosevelt family. Purchased when Franklin Roosevelt was just a year old or so. There's Maine out in the distance, right over there. Beautiful view. You can easily, definitely see why they'd fall in love with this place. The Visitor Center on Campobello serves a dual purpose, highlighting the lives and activities of the Roosevelt family, as well as the legacy of friendship and cooperation between the U.S. and Canadian governments. The Roosevelt Cottage served as a summer retreat home for the family from Franklin's youngest years until 1952. Upon Eleanor's death in 1962, the property was deeded to the governments of Canada and the United States. Franklin's mother, Sarah, had gifted the property to FDR and Eleanor as a wedding present in 1908, and it was here in 1921 that FDR would be stricken with polio, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. though he would sail to Campobello again in 1933 and visit very briefly on 2 occasions as president, FDR would never again be able to stay and vacation at this island retreat that he loved so very, very much.
The big megaphone here was actually suspended right out on the screened-in porch by a hook and a chain, and now until she hollered to the children. It actually, the Roosevelt children actually was homeschooled or tutored, whatever you want to call it.
The Roosevelts employed local workers to maintain the home and to prepare the cottage and grounds for the annual summertime visits. But when the family was on site, with 5 kids and a full staff, the cottage was always bustling with activity. Just like any kids, just collecting rocks, bringing them on in.
Called the Jenny, and it was modeled after a World War I airplane, and the Roosevelt children actually made that, and it would fly. Big elastic, they wrapped it around, there's a hook on the tail, and it would fly. So we had to ground the Jenny, and the Jenny's falling apart. It's probably one of our oldest things. And he could remember Franklin coming up on a sailboat, and it kind of looked like one that he had come up on. So he made it and donated it to us, so we put it in the nursery.
The Campobello retreat is called a cottage, but it is definitely larger than anything that I think of as a cottage, complete with 34 rooms, including 18 bedrooms. The Roosevelt cottage at Campobello here is the ice house. The Roosevelts actually had hired somebody to be their personal ice worker who would all winter long gather up the ice and secure it and prep it so that it would be ready for their 6 to 8 weeks that they would spend here every summer, and that it would stay. Now, as I walk in here, it is already probably a good 5 or even 10 degrees colder. This would be where they would store the ice prepped for them to come take it and put it into their ice box. But all of this would be for their supplies and for the blocks that they would have here, and they'd lay sawdust in between to keep the ice nice and cold all winter long and ready for the summer. Ice houses. Things that with modern conveniences we don't even think about anymore. With freezers and AC units, HVAC, and electricity. The amount of work that would have to come in just to keep things from spoiling. After touring the Roosevelt cottage, we explored more of the island. The furthest tip of the island features perhaps the most iconic and breathtaking view of Campobello, despite some lingering foggy conditions. The Head Harbor Lighthouse, also known as the East Croix Lighthouse, was cut off from the main island during our visit. But during low tide, visitors can often walk on the dry sea floor to visit the lighthouse and the buildings. Campobello Island is beautiful, with lighthouses, trails, beaches, whale watching, and stunning scenery. And while the International Park with the Roosevelt Cottage is here, the island also is home to a New Brunswick Provincial Park, as well as several villages and towns to make an extended vacation a fun, relaxing, and rejuvenating retreat. Just remember, you'll need your passport to get to and from the island. We're continuing our foggy, overcast Friday, which does bring a little bit of a mystical air to it, even though we can't see out to the sea as far as we'd otherwise would like. But sometimes that's why they have lighthouses. Here, the West Quaddy Lighthouse. Lubec, Maine, the easternmost lighthouse, the easternmost point in the United States. You could say it's Alaska based on how you look at the international dateline. But no disrespect, the folks here in Lubec, Maine, I believe, can rightly claim the title of the easternmost lighthouse. This beautiful red-white striped design, very iconic lighthouse here in Maine. the first to see the sunrise, guiding ships in to the USA. Really, really cool. Lighthouses just dot the coastlines all throughout Maine and the Canadian Maritimes and New England in general. This is one of the most recognizable. Check out the quarters and the lighthouses all throughout the eastern seaboard. But fascinating to think about the history, the inner workings of lighthouses, the lightkeepers that would have to live on residence to keep commerce, sailors, all of that integral to the economy and the lives of so many people throughout the centuries. Really, really cool. Continuing down US 1 south, down the coast of Maine, we come to Columbia Falls, Maine, and this giant half-dome geodesic sphere blue building. Wild Blueberry. Looks like the name of this place is Wild Blueberry Land, according to the door here. I think you got all sorts of blueberry-related treats and snacks. Random building shape. Looks like there's blueberry-shaped pylons and even a playground here nearby. And a yellow brick road. Interesting. Fun and unique, and let's check it out. Looks like inside there's also a museum and a Wild Blueberry Hall of Honor. Museum about blueberry farming and family farms here in Maine. History and geology of blueberry farming. So more than just a roadside attraction, this is actually a very educational location, helping to support the local blueberry farmers here as well. So any type of donation would be accepted, as well as blueberry treats and snacks. Inside Wild Blueberry Land, Columbia Falls, Maine. Blueberry pie. Wild Blueberry Land. Looks like this may at one point have been mini golf. And then either just repurposed or transformed into this wild blueberry section. I don't know. Maybe if more folks were able to come on by, they can retransform this back into blueberry-themed mini golf.
We had a great time exploring Campobello, St Croix Island, and the furthest reaches of coastal Maine. Thanks for hitting those holiday roads with us, and be on the lookout for our next video as we spend 24 hours in the Atlantic Coast's most highly acclaimed national park, Acadia National Park. Be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you know when our videos are uploaded, and follow along.